So a little while back, I had a video on my channel absolutely blow up. It's at 150,000 views right now and steadily climbing as well. It was the video that I unboxed the 2018 Gibson SG Special. Now, I don't have the instrument anymore for various reasons, but if you haven't been following along, basically I got that guitar brand new from Musician's Friend for a great deal, and when it showed up at my house, I unboxed it on the video, and I showed the good and bad things about the instrument. A lot of the bad things were stuff that I thought should have been caught in quality control. But in the video, I shared a lot about some insight I had on setting intonation, action on your guitar, neck relief, all stuff that I think every guitar should be able to do. And I had a lot of comments asking me how did I learn to do that, and if I could make a video that is a little bit more detailed on, basically a how-to get started, starting to do this stuff yourself. And my experience coming from setting up guitars has always just been that I was too lazy or I didn't have enough money to go to a proper luthier or anything, so I've just kind of learned to do it myself. I think a lot of guitarists are scared of operating on their own instrument, especially with the truss rod. They think that they're going to hurt it somehow, but the fact is that it's made to work. It's made to be used, and I don't think you should pay someone to turn a knob or something. So in this video, I want to show you some things that I'm doing myself with some very basic tools. I'm on a ship gig right now, and coming up to the end of the contract, I dropped off my PRS in New York with my family, and I picked up this guitar, which has a detachable neck. I'll be flying home from Hong Kong in February, so I didn't want to risk getting my PRS broken on the plane. But basically, I'm going to be going through and setting up this guitar so it's ready to play in a couple minutes here tonight. And what we're going to be doing is obviously restringing it. I'm going to show you some things that I like to do when I restring a guitar, and also I'm going to talk about setting the intonation, setting the action, the radius on the saddles if you have one of these guitars that you have to adjust the radius in the bridge, and then also the neck relief. So I'll get started in a second, but I do have to say, as far as tools go, you're not going to need much. I have a multi-tool here. This is just a simple thing that I picked up at a Guitar Center or on Amazon or something, I forget, and basically it's a multi-tool, but all of the tools in it are guitar-sized. So we've got a couple different options for Allen keys here, screwdrivers, and then something to adjust the truss rod if you've got a male truss rod bolt, or if you have a female one, then the Allen key works for that. So just everything that's sized to common guitar dimensions that you might find on Ibanez, Alvarez, Gibson, Fender, Vox guitars, whatever. This is something that I think every guitarist needs to have in their case. If you're ever at an outside gig and the humidity hits the guitar and all of a sudden all your strings are against the frets, this can be a very simple fix for that. If you're going to adjust the intonation or the action on your guitar, the first thing you have to do is set it up with a brand new set of strings so that we're getting the right measurements. So the first thing we do once we have new strings on it is set the neck relief. This means we're going to look down the end of the guitar neck from the nut to the body, and we're going to make sure that the neck is either straight. If you like a really, really low action, you're going to want the neck completely straight. If you like to get under the strings a little bit and bend, if you're more of a blues or rock player, there's a little bit of wiggle room. You can have a little bit of a dip in it. So this is really just up to preference. I don't adjust the truss rod often. A lot of people are scared of doing it, but the fact is, as I said before, it's there to be used, and with changing seasons, this is something that can be really useful to keeping your guitar consistent between the different periods of the year, whether it's humid or dry outside, cold, hot, whatever. I usually adjust it twice a year. So in the winter, sometime around November, December, I usually end up releasing a little bit of tension from the truss rod. So over time, the neck will bend backwards a little bit, just as it gets drier and colder outside, and the strings get closer to the fretboard. So adjusting the relief in the neck is a way of adjusting action, although it's not the way that you should address action. It does affect action. And then as we get towards the summer months in the United States, where I am anyway, around like April, May, the neck's going to pull forward a little bit, and we're going to get a lot of distance between the strings and the frets. So I like to pull it back, and that'll keep it straight. Looking down the end of the guitar, we can see that the neck is really pretty straight on it right now. Actually a little bit bowed towards the strings. If you can look at it, the nut starts here, and then the neck, it might be hard to see on the camera, it actually comes up just a little bit until it comes back down at the body. So I'm going to relieve some tension in the neck. This is, right now as I film this is about December, and I haven't played this guitar for a couple months. So when adjusting the truss rod, the only precaution you really have to take is that you don't adjust it too much too quickly. So I like to go with about a half turn, and then I'll let it sit for a day or so just to adjust to it. And if you have to adjust it a little bit more the next day, then just go with another half turn. I think even less than that, even a quarter turn is going to do it for me here. I just want a little bit more of relief in the neck. So what I'm going to do here is just make a mental note of where and I'm kind of at an awkward point with how the Allen key works here. Just kind of make a mental note of where the key is, and as I twist it, I'm just going to go for a quarter turn. As we turn it to the left, this means that we're loosening the truss rod a little bit. You heard it crack. That's because it hasn't been used in a while, and that's normal, completely normal. Now I turned the truss rod to the left because my neck was pretty straight and I wanted to add a little bit of relief in it. So when I loosened the truss rod by turning the bolt to the left, the neck was given a little bit of a bow in this direction. Likewise, if you've got too much of that going on, when you tighten the truss rod, it's going to bring the middle up, basically. So it'll add a little bit of that concave curve to it. Not so much that you actually have that sort of curve, but it's going to bring it straighter, I should say. As you tighten it, you're going to make the neck straighter, and as you loosen it, you're going to create a little bit of a dip here. Since I wanted to be able to get under the strings, like I mentioned before, I created a little bit of a dip in the neck, and that just gives me some more wiggle room in these couple frets where I'm going to be likely to be bending. After you set the truss rod, we're going to take a look at the saddles on the bridge, and this won't apply to you if you just have a one-piece bridge or a two-piece bridge like a Les Paul, where the sides of the treble and the bass strings go up and down together. This is going to really apply to Telecaster and Fender style guitars, where you have height adjustments for each individual string. So we're not quite talking about action yet here, although the saddles obviously are what you're going to need to use to adjust the action. What we're talking about here is just making sure that we have the correct radius of the saddles. Most guitars, unless you've got a totally flat fingerboard like on an Ibanez or a very modern shredder style 80s guitar, most guitars are going to have a bit of a radius in the neck, depending on your preferred style of guitar. The very standard size for a Strat is 9. If you have a real old school vintage one or one of the new PRS Silver Skies, they've got like a 7.5 inch radius, which is much more curved, but this one has 9 inches. So you're going to want to find that out. You know, look it up online, look up the model of your guitar online, look up the specs if you don't know it offhand, and I'll show you how to create a guide so that you can make sure these are all at the correct height. This next part gets a little mathy, but stick with me, it's pretty easy. What you're going to need is a ruler, a pencil, and a string of some sort. I'm using a lanyard because that's what I have, and I don't have a ruler, so we're just going to fake it, and we're going to approximate 9 inches for the radius of the fretboard. That's what my guitar has, so we're going to hold it down here. With one hand, hold the paper down so you know it doesn't move, and then we're going to measure 9 inches from the point that you're holding the lanyard out. And I'm just faking it here. Say that's 9 inches, and then keeping the string tight, we're going to draw around in a curve like this. And this is going to give us roughly a 9-inch fretboard radius. It's going to show us what that should look like. You can see there's a little bit of a curve there, but it's very gradual. So I don't recommend using paper. If you do have a hard plastic or something like a folder is going to work a lot better, something that's a stiff material. So just cut along that line then, and then on this side of the line you have a gauge that you can line up against with the strings. Once you've made the cutout, you're going to line it up against the strings here so that this is the radius curve we just cut, laying right against the strings. And you're going to want to make sure that the sides are first correctly done. So the E and the E string on either side. Lower the middle 4 if you have to until you get that set up, and then bring up the next two, so the A and the B, until they touch the paper just barely, and then finally finish with the G and the D strings. Make sure that you don't have any space in between this cutout and the strings, and make sure that it also doesn't rock back and forth at all, because that'll mean that it's uneven. So after you've set the general radius here, we're going to raise and lower all of the saddles together until we, achieve a desirable action here. I'll talk about action in a second. Now, if you have 2 screws on it, make sure obviously that you're raising and lowering them both. Otherwise, your saddle's going to end up getting cocked to one side or the other. So the way I like to do it is make sure your guitar's in tune first, because of course that's going to affect the amount of tension on the neck. Make sure it's perfectly in tune, and then raise or lower it as you need to get the desired action. So count 1 or 2 turns here on each one, and then obviously do that for the rest of them. Now obviously the action of the strings on your guitar is totally up to the individual that owns it and plays with it. I personally like a little bit of room to get under the notes and bend, but also I don't mind having it so low in the lower frets that it buzzes a little bit on the upper strings. I think on electric guitar that's not too bad. If you experience a little bit of string buzzing, you are going to notice a loss in sustain, just a little bit. And likewise, if you have higher strings, the tone is going to be a little bit different. A lot of people prefer the tone of higher action, and that's why they go for it. But of course, it makes it more difficult to play. So there's trade-offs in either direction. And really, the beauty about being able to do all this work yourself is that you can experiment and spend as much time as you need to figuring out what your preferred setup is and how each of the guitars should work for you, and you're not dropping a ton of money with a guitar tech. Once you have the action generally where you're going to want to set it, it is okay to go in there and change the individual height of strings just a little bit to fit your taste. So if you prefer a little bit of higher action on these lower strings so you're not getting any sustain loss or buzz, go ahead and just raise the lower ones. It's not going to affect the radius too much. But I showed you the, making the radius gauge just because that's always a good place to start. Now finally, for the last piece here, we've come to intonation, how to set your own intonation, and obviously this is the most difficult part. This is why we have new strings on the guitar, because it's very precise. I do it myself with a strobe tuner and used in combination with my ear, tuning octaves across the neck. Your goal is going to be able to get the guitar to sound good in first position and also in tune at 12th position. And if you're playing, chords matched with open strings, that everything is in tune all across the neck. And I'll show you a little bit of my technique as I do this. So the final piece of the puzzle here, the intonation is going to be affected with these little screws here on a Strat or Telecaster style guitar, and there's going to be screws on your stop tail bridge if you've got a Les Paul PRS style thing. And basically what we're going to be adjusting is moving the saddle, the last point of contact the string has before it goes across the body. We're going to be moving the last point of contact either towards the guitar neck or away. The easiest way to start checking the intonation on your guitar per string is obviously going to start with the top string, the thickest one. Get that as perfectly in tune as you can, either with the strobe tuner or whatever other method you have. And we're going to check the open string. We're going to check the harmonic on the 12th fret, and we're going to check the fretted 12th fret note. So as long as your open string is in tune, this is going to be pretty reliable. Check the harmonic first, which is going to be just a tad sharp if you have a very accurate tuning source. Harmonics are always sharp, and they get sharper as you go down the fretboard. So check the harmonic, and then check it against the fretted 12th fret note. I can actually hear that my 12th fret fretted note is a little bit more sharp than the harmonic. So in other words, what this means is that my saddle is a little bit too far forward. So the way to kind of understand how the saddle affects the intonation here is that your saddle is deciding the overall string length of the guitar, and as you move it closer, in effect, you're increasing the percentage that the frets cover. So a way to think of it is kind of that the frets are actually expanding and the fretboard's getting longer. Obviously that's not happening, but as you move this string this way towards the neck with the saddle, the string length is shortening and the frets are covering more ground. So as you do that, it's going to get sharper and sharper as you go up the fretboard. So although your first string might be in tune at the nut, and it's going to be relatively in tune in the first couple frets, it's going to start showing itself being sharp as you check it with a strobe tuner. So if you check this and your fretted note is sharper than the harmonic, you're going to want to lower it back this way so that we expand the length of the string and the frets cover less area. So I'm going to take a second and go righty-tighty on this. This is going to turn the screw to the right, and it's going to bring the saddle a little bit further away from the neck. It's going to bring it closer to the end of the body. And again, simple is it here. So just do a quarter turn or half turn at a time, and then check the intonation again with the strobe tuner. Obviously, since you've changed the tension on the string, you're going to have to retune it each time you touch it. It's a very time-consuming process. So I've got the E string in tune again, and I'm going to check the harmonic against the fretted note. Still sharp. So I'm going to keep repeating this process until I can get them to pretty much exactly the same pitch. Like I said before, if the harmonic is a little bit sharp, that's totally okay. That's how it's supposed to be, actually. So you'll check it that way. Repeat that process across all the strings to get the 12th fret in tune. And then we're going to go back and we're going to tune the strings again, the open strings, and we're going to test each fret going up, and we're going to watch for all of them to make sure that we don't have any uneven frets, because that can actually affect intonation as well. And although it's not going to be something that you have to fix immediately, it's something to keep an eye out for. And I don't touch the frets on my own guitars. That is actually something I take it to a luthier for. So basically your thought process would be, first, tune all the strings, obviously, with a new set of strings. Then you're going to check the intonation on the 12th fret harmonic against the actual fretted pitch. And then once we've adjusted that as close as we can, we're going to go up and check each note all the way on every single fret going up the guitar, and that'll give us a pretty good picture of what's going on. And if you want to go one step further, you can even check octaves across the instrument. You can hear it's a little bit out of tune. It's been a while since I played this guitar, but you can check octaves around the instrument with open strings to really intonate the entire thing in the most fine way that you can. One last important thing to look out for, just like the frets that I mentioned, is the pickup height, because this can actually affect the intonation of your guitar as well. Pickups are made of magnets inherently, and magnets pull on the strings. So if your pickup is too close to the string, especially on these upper frets, especially on a Strat, it's very evident. You can't really even get away from it, but the pickup can actually pull the string out of tune. It's going to make intonation impossible all the way up here. So just do the best you can with the pickup height that you prefer. Hope this video was helpful to you, and if you're coming here from the Gibson SG unboxing video, I appreciate you checking out my channel further. I release videos, tips and stuff that I've learned across my short career of playing the guitar. I release videos like this all the time, so hopefully something else in the future is going to be helpful to you. I might have one coming out either in a week or maybe it's already out. I do my videos pretty far in advance because it takes a lot of time to edit. But back in September I filmed a really detailed video talking about what I'm doing when I'm restringing guitars, how I'm touching up the fingerboard. It's more guitar repair stuff, and I'm sharing with you the best way I've found to retune, to string the strings around the tuning pegs. So if that's interesting to you, make sure you stay tuned or go back and check the video if it's already uploaded on that. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.